Welcome to a new episode of Outside the Panels with your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes.
Welcome everyone to an episode of Outside the Panels. Here with another show, another book, another creator. I am still basking in the glory of the Dolphins winning the first game of the season. I hope the professor's watching. His Patriots lost, so who cares? Right, up then. Enough about sports. Back to comic books. And I have got a treat for you in the shape of writer, creator of Sherlock Holmes and the Empire Builder. I should say. Editor-in-chief of Tripwire, the ultra-talented, does everything, including put the staples in the book. It's Mr. Joel Meadows. Joel, how's it going?
Hello, I'm very well, thanks. How are you? I
am okay. I'm very well indeed. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to chat to me about Sherlock. I'm going to start with a really big question. You can boil it down. What do you think is the eternal enjoyment that people get out of Sherlock Holmes?
Well, I guess when Conan Doyle created him, he created such a universal figure. I mean, there are a few others. You've got Batman and James Bond. These are figures, and even to a lesser extent, things like the Three Musketeers. These are characters that people always love, and there are ways of reinventing, these figures from time to time, putting them in different settings, putting them against other characters, and there's just a universality about Holmes that everybody loves.
Interesting. Universality, because we're talking, he's the quintessential British detective. But yes, we've seen him in movies. He's been played by Robert Downey Jr. He's been on TV in Sherlock.
Yes.
Yeah, there are all these iterations. There are some constants, of course. The drug use, the partner in crime in a Dr. Watson of some description. How is it you can try and conceive of something new to take a character that is so, well known? People see Sherlock, they automatically A, think they know him, and B, know what's going on. How do you manage to create something different?
Well, basically what I did is, what I thought would be interesting would be to juxtapose the fictional Sherlock Holmes and Watson with the real world. So Sherlock Holmes and the Empire Builders basically deals with Holmes and Watson leaves to go and unravel the DNA helix, which was discovered in the 1950s, I think, by Watson and Crick. So you see what I've done there. And then Oswald Mosley, this rather delightful English real historical figure who was, like a British Nazi. He gets Watson with the assistance of the other scientists to create an army of super soldiers, and it doesn't go particularly well. And I won't talk about Watson's role. It is quite different. So Holmes is thrown into this sort of maelstrom where he's fighting against Mosley with the assistance of some other new characters. So I thought, as I said, juxtaposing, a fictional character, like Holmes and Watson, with a real historical figure like Mosley, and sort of mixing it up. And as I said, I felt like that would create a whole different story that people haven't seen before, hopefully.
Well, okay. You mentioned that the characters that we recognize, like Holmes, Batman, and that type of character.
Yes.
When you have a fictional character juxtaposed. Is that a word? It is now. I've just made a new word up. When you put in between the fantasy world or the fictional world and a reality of sorts,
yes,
that sounds like another British icon, to be honest. That's a little bit Doctor Who, isn't it?
Well, there's no time travel in this. And there isn't. It's a steampunk story, but there isn't. I mean, it is a sci-fi story of sorts, but not really. There isn't. He's not going to be getting into a police box and traveling through time.
Granted, but the idea of having your character hang out with people, real world people. I mean, how many Doctor Who episodes have we seen where he's like bumped into, some historical, or I should say now, shouldn't I, because of Geordie? They've bumped into historical characters and interacted. It seems quite a British foible that we like to play with.
A little bit. I mean, I would compare it more to Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion stuff a little bit. With things like Jerry Cornelius and Oswald Bastable and I guess Hawkmoon a little bit, and also if we're talking about comics here, Brian Talbot's Luther Arkwright, although it's nowhere near as trippy or as and I don't know if it's quite as accomplished. Obviously, Brian's a very he's a very established creator, but I would say that they're two good touch marks to compare it with. I mean, it's not a detective story in the traditional sense.
No.
So it's more of a sci-fi adventure. So the Doctor Who thing, there isn't really much of that. I mean, as I said, he's not getting into a small blue telephone box and fighting robots or Cybermen or anything like that. But it is a sci-fi adventure. So obviously this is not. There are elements of science, but I'm not a scientist. It had to be an enjoyable story. We probably get some science wrong, but as long as people enjoy reading the story, then I think that's probably less important.
I agree with you on that one. Getting the science wrong, that's the purview of Star Trek, isn't it? I mean, I was talking to a guy a couple of weeks ago, and we're having this complete conversation about if someone traveled at warp speed, what would happen to your body and all this sort of stuff.
We get pulled to pieces, presumably.
Yeah, indeed. So the idea, of course, science works within the remit of the pages of the story.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It is fictional. I mean, Holmes wasn't real. This
Don't be saying that.
I know it sounds like Father Christmas. I'm crushing your
oh no,
all of your dreams. But
kids.
So as long as it's an enjoyable adventure story, which I hope it is.
Cool. Do you have a favorite Sherlock Holmes iteration?
Well, I always liked Jeremy Brett on television, who was around in the 80s. He was a magnificent. I really like Young Sherlock Holmes that was made by Zemeckis and Spielberg in the 1980s, where you see him as a teenage boy, and you get the origin of him, and you get the origin of Moriarty, and so I guess those two. I mean, there's been a lot of really good Holmes portrayals. There was Ian McKellen in oh god, my brain's not working tonight. He was in a film about 3 or 4 years ago where Holmes retires and goes to the coast.
All right.
He lives in this woman's house. It's all to do with kind of bees and a previous case which he couldn't quite solve. Because the thing about this is, Holmes is older here. He's an older man. He's not physically as fit as he was.
Yeah.
Mentally, he's still got his acuity, but he's not, as I said, physically as fit as he was. So I mean, there's been a lot of pretty incredible portrayals of the character, on film and on TV over the years for me.
The current one is, what's his name? Johnny.
Oh, talking about Elementary. You mean the Johnny Miller?
Yeah.
That was a decent series actually, and they moved it to the States, and they gave him Lucy Liu as his sort of sidekick. And I would say that was quite a clever series again, because of taking in and putting him in a totally different setting and putting him in a real setting. Everyone else was real, but Holmes was still the fictional creation basically. So
So we talk about Holmes. I suppose there's not one way of skinning this particular cat, right?
No, I mean, I think there are millions of ways. I mean, you've had female Holmes, you've had African American Holmes, you've had all kinds of iterations of the character, and I guess that's one of the beauties of Holmes that Doyle created, is he's quite a broad figure that you can use as a canvas to create your story.
Very much like James Bond.
Yes, well, precisely.
Yeah, because James Bond changes his face and no one bats an eyelid.
Well, no, exactly.
It's crazy. So this is kind of a steampunk set in an alternative future, kind of.
Alternative past. It's set in the 1920s, but
so you've kind of got that going on. Do you like the steampunk genre? Is this something that you've always kind of got in the background, or is this new ground for yourself, Joel?
Well, it's new ground, I guess, for myself. I mean, I've enjoyed a few, but it's not an area that I particularly know a lot about, I admit. But I thought it was a good fit for this, because it meant that you could play around with history. Because as I said, I think the DNA helix wasn't really unraveled until the 1950s, I don't think. So we've played with history here. So there are certain things. There's no First World War. There's no Second World War. The world is a very different place. And I remember when I interviewed someone who worked on Pennyworth, the TV series. And they said that what it was kind of like you were stepping off the pavement in the real world and stepping off into a slightly different direction. And I think that's just as good, an analogy here is that it is sort of the real world, but you've got this, iconic fictional character in it. And the world's taken a very different path, because we've got this monster basically who's ruling England, and do all manner of horrendous things with the assistance of Watson. Obviously, he's a man of great principle, and that does lead to a clash between Watson and Mosley, and some other things, occur
down the line. Yeah.
Down the line. But no, it's just, I'm not, the steampunk is not anything I've written, before, but I think it was a good fit. So we're playing around with world history, playing around with scientific history. It seemed to suit the story.
No, perfect. Let's have a look at. You kind of send some pages over.
Yes.
Let's have a look. Here's one of them.
So these are the first 4 pages. I've written in quite a cinematic fashion. So his name is Franklin Miller. He's the last of. There was a band of that. Well, they were. I guess that were. Well, I'm not sure we'd call them. They were. Well, I guess they were criminals of sorts. They were called the Mohawks, around in Regency London, and they would cause all manner of trouble in London. So he's kind of the last of them, and so he gets involved. He assists Holmes eventually to bring down Mosley, and he's a thorn in the side of Mosley and Mosley's sort of group of rather questionable government figures. So here he's about to assassinate the mayor of London. Because I wanted to start with a very dramatic opener, which didn't have Holmes in it, but I thought this would be a great opener. I mean, I admit I was thinking about something like Day of the Jackal here. As I said, I was thinking about cinematic approach. So this is the first 5 or 6 pages are very cinematic, and I wanted to throw people into the deep end and go, blimey, what's going on here? I think that's a good way to get people involved in the story.
Agreed. Black and white, was that a choice from a creative point of view, or?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we have, the book is black and white with an 8-page color pin-up section at the back, but we thought that it would really show off the art in a really nice way to have it as a black and white story. Because Andy Bennett's art just looks amazing in black and white, so we felt it would suit the subject matter best, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I love the black and white. I think the black and white can really pop, tells a story. Yes, definitely. Yes. I think sometimes colors can detract from the art to an extent. I think they can spoil the mood.
Sometimes it depends. I mean, there are lots of very talented colorists out there. But we just felt in this particular instance that the black and white would suit it. We wouldn't be averse, down the line to running it in color if we once the 2 volumes are out.
Yeah,
we can talk about running it in color sort of after the fact, if you like.
Indeed, and there are. I mean, I would say probably in the last 20 years, 25 years, coloring of comic books is probably the thing that's improved dramatically. Other than the internet being able to talk to people across the other side of the world.
Yes.
So there you go. There's
the. He's setting his sights on the mayor, quite literally. Yeah. He's up in this abandoned tower, and he's having a puff on his pipe, and he's getting his his slightly steampunk rifle. It's not too steampunk if you look. It still looks like a kind of credible rifle that someone in the 1920s would use. Because I thought about making it really outlandish, but I thought, what, we need to ground this a little bit in reality, so it can't be too. It can't be kind of like a laser gun or something. It has to be an actual rifle. With a little bit of a tweak, basically.
I think one of the things that I like about steampunk is the kind of level of detail that people go into, the logical leaps to take to get a gun or a projectile to work.
Yeah.
So you need this, and I need that, and then that kind of just builds onto the concept.
So hopefully, I mean, there are things like the tube. We've called it the Subterra because I quite like that name in the story. And then there are things. There aren't tons. You haven't got flying cars, or you've got. I mean, you have got a bike. You've got an actual an Enfield motorbike in the opening scene, and this guy rides one because I thought, who doesn't look cool? Which characters don't look cool riding a motorbike? And I just thought he'd be the perfect choice. So Andy Bennett had to get a little bit of reference for that, and I think he's done a good job. So so it's a mix of history and fiction and sci-fi, really.
There you go. There's the bike in question.
The bike in question, which I hope he doesn't curse me too much, because I do throw a few things in there. I think there's a Webley, which was a pistol that was used during the First World War that British army officers used. So I think there's a Webley in there. So I like to throw in little details like that, as I said, because it's kind of fun. These are fun details. They're not essential, but I do think it adds a little bit extra color, to the story to include things like that in there. Like in the story, the the one of the rebel bases is the head of the monument in London, but rather than the big flaming pineapple, it's actually the head of Oswald Mosley. So the irony is that the rebels are kind of based in this monument.
It's like Danger Mouse in the
playing
pillbox.
history, which I really enjoy.
You put a lot of effort into having a sense of could almost be history.
Yes.
I think that's a fine. I think that's a fine kind of road to walk, because we all know our history. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, we know Sherlock, or at least we have an idea of Sherlock.
Yes.
So I think giving it that almost history, that what could have been, I think adds a little bit of credence. You said earlier that Holmes isn't a real character, but to a lot of people, he pretty much
he feels real. A lot of people see him as a real figure.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Robin Hood. People think, yes,
no,
was he real, was he not? And there's loads of different anecdotal stories about Robin Hood or Robin of Locksley.
Yes. I mean, obviously he was based loosely on a real historical figure, but there are certain things, like I've been to Sherwood Forest, which is impressive, but they show you Robin Hood's tree, but if it was planted, when he was around, it would have been like a tiny sapling, so he wouldn't be able to hide very easily in that. So it's just, but people love legends. I'm as much a sucker, like King Arthur. I know he was based
just about
on a real figure, and Arthur was supposed to be. It was an honorific, for like a Welsh chieftain, basically. So it wasn't necessarily one man. It was kind of like Caesar. So he was like Caesar for the Welsh, effectively. So I think it's interesting. I mean, I came up with a line which I've used on the back of the first book, which is history can turn on a penny. So things can change. Think about politics changing, like certain people, if they were in power, if they were picked as leader of a particular party, you think how different it would have been. Like if John Smith had survived, Blair wouldn't have been prime minister, and it would have been totally different if the other Miliband would have been picked. And I think about things like this, about what could have happened if certain things hadn't happened. History is a series of what ifs. Potentially, and things can change so dramatically through things like that.
How hard then is it as a creator to kind of, first of all, you've got that little kernel of that initial what if,
yes,
that little bit of unraveling of history to make almost history.
Yes.
Then you've got to kind of like follow the threads as it goes through. I mean, that must take A, a lot of imagination, and B, a lot of research to make sure you're still hitting the relevant touch points to make the book feel like it could be. You know what I'm saying? Because if you go too far away from the actual history, it becomes far-fetched.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken 20 years. I mean, we had a go at this 20 years ago. We tried to get it with a traditional publisher, nobody bit, so we put it aside, and then on the website on Tripwire, I do a thing called Lost Tales about comics which never happened, and Scott Braden, who writes that, said, "Have you got anything?" And I said, "I've got this Sherlock Holmes thing that I worked on." This was 2018, I think it was, so it was like 15 or 16 years, and after talking to him about it, I thought actually maybe we should revisit this because it got me interested again. I mean, Holmes started with the DNA helix because it's a really interesting story. And as I said, it's not a science story, it's fictional, it doesn't have to adhere to the strict rules of science, but it's interesting to have that and the fact that they were Watson and Crick, it just seemed like too good an opportunity to pass up. So what if it was John Watson, and if it was in this alternate world, where Holmes's sidekick goes to help him, and the helix is unraveled earlier, and it leads to this horrendous thing. It leads Mosley to think, I can create an army of super soldiers to do my bidding. So obviously it moves quite far away from the reality, but it does have a little bit of a basis in fact.
I think it's that intrigue, isn't it, that it could be John Watson.
Yes,
that's going to be the pull. And I think I'm going to talk a little bit Doctor Who in this as well, so apologies. Okay. I don't mean to keep mashing it together. But Sherlock and the Doctor have these kind of like flights of inspiration, and chaos, and it's up to the Dr. Watson and for the Doctor, of course, his companion, to help ground the reader or the viewer into, because they're supposed to be as lost as we are.
Yes.
They're our proxy, aren't they?
Yes,
You've turned that paradigm around slightly.
Yeah, because I've also introduced, there's a number of new characters that we've created. There's one called Six, who is he's a Gurkha agent. He works for Mosley, and he switches sides. And there's a guy Miller, who you see in the beginning, who's the Mohawk. And there is Watson, but there's going to be some things happening. So you get to see, you'll leave it there. You see Watson's son, and you get to, so they're basically fighting against Mosley. So you have rebels effectively fighting against, this evil figure who runs the country. And so Holmes is there, but Holmes doesn't have his anchor. He doesn't have Watson with him. So he's there. There is, talking about the drug taking, there is quite a dark scene. I mean, I realized when I had to label it for Diamond to say, is this suitable for all audiences, or is it for mature? I think it does have to be for mature, because there are some killings in the book, and there is quite a nasty drug scene. You don't see him taking the drugs, but you kind of see him. He heads to Limehouse to score some drugs, basically, because he feels down, he feels rudderless because Watson had gone. And it's a scene I quite like, but it's actually a very dark scene. I was thinking, blimey, this is taking to a dark path, but that's not a bad thing. I mean, it's about light and shade, a story like this, and hopefully that'll make it more interesting for the reader, that there are, these tonal shifts. So you've got the big, broad adventure stuff, and then you've got the more sort of intimate, personal details.
Excellent. Right, we'll take a quick break now for one of our other shows, and we're going to come back. We'll talk a little bit more Sherlock before talking about Tripwire. You said that this book was 20 years in the making.
Indeed.
That sounds like a bit of an old-timer advert plug for me, so check it out, the Old Timers Comic Book Show.
Do you want to find out what makes the Professor do his happy dance? Check out the Old Timers Comic Book Show, only on the UCPN.
The Old Timers Comic Book Show, where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. There you go. Everyone loves that. Everyone play that advert. Everybody smiles at the Professor doing his dance. Well done. Well done. Right. I want to ask you a question. We were talking just before the break about the 20-year thing.
Yes.
Do you feel that the influx of creator-owned books and independent books and independent publishers over the last 20 years has made the creation of this book for you easier?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we had a Zoop, so we had a crowdfunding campaign to fund the book. As I said, we got turned down back in 20 years ago for the book. We did get turned down again from a number of quite large publishers for this. So we just thought, sod it, we'll do it ourselves, and it's made it a lot easier. With things like social media and crowdfunding platforms, it's a lot easier to be seen now. And to get it out there, and we're with the book is, as well as the crowdfunding thing, we've offered it through Diamond and Luna, and we are a very tiny publisher. We do the magazine and we do the website. We've never done a comic before, but because of the more of a level playing field, I guess, in the industry, you can compete, with the bigger guys, which is amazing, which I find incredible, really.
There is the link to get your pre-order on. We are going to have a look at the website in a little bit. So, yes, I know it's a long link, but guys and girls, you know how to use the internet. Why don't you...
Exactly, just copy and paste it, then you're away.
You could tripwiremagazine.co.uk. There's a search feature.
Indeed, search for Sherlock Holmes and you'll find it. So exactly.
I mean, come on. If you can use Google, you can find the book, right?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
And it's also Waterstones and foils. So I don't want to complicate things, but for UK listeners, it's also on the Waterstones and the Foils website. So people just want to search on there, if they want to support their bookshop as well as their comic shop.
That's a good message to have for sure. I buy things from Waterstones still. Because you've got,
they're great websites. I mean, it's really exciting for me to see the first comic thing that I've written on the Waterstones and also it's on Amazon UK as well. It's actually really exciting because we've done stuff through Diamond, for years. We've actually got quite blasé about it because we've done a lot of product through it, a lot of comics magazines and the anniversary book, but an actual comic, on Waterstones and Falls. That for me, that is actually very exciting.
Good indeed. It adds a level of authenticity.
Exactly.
I remember,
and legitimacy as well. Yes.
I remember I did a review for one of my first reviews for Comic Crusaders years ago.
Yes.
It was a Vietnam book from Image. I think it was called 66 or something. I don't know what it was called. So I go into my local Forbidden Planet to pick up my comic book order. And then as I'm strolling around the shop, I see the comic that I reviewed. I was like, I reviewed that.
Yes.
I mean, now I see my name on the backs of trade paperbacks, quoting the reviews.
I've had that I've had a few on a few comics. It is it's still nice to see that. It is nice.
Oh yeah, it's great. When it catches me by surprise, I'm like, yeah, I wrote that. Yeah, and everyone looks at me in the store and go, "What? Who are you?" I'm like, "Yeah, thanks." Right, talk to me about Tripwire, because we're going to have a look at the web page, specifically aimed at Sherlock. So, for those that don't know what Tripwire is, help them out.
Right, Tripwire started life as a print fanzine in 1992, and then we evolved and we got things like colored covers. We increased our frequency. We did the print magazine from 92 to 2011. It was getting tougher to get advertising, so we did one anniversary book in 2013, and then we switched to the web in 2015. But we miss print. I love having a physical object, something tactile in my hand. So in 2020, which was like the worst year imaginable because of COVID, a magazine came out about 6 or 7 months late. It was supposed to come out in March, but it came out I think in December in the end. But we were very pleased with it, very proud of it, and so we did 3 one-off once a year print publications, and they did really well. And so as of this year, we've switched to doing a print quarterly. So in May we brought out an Indiana Jones cover issue. The one at the printers is a Sandman at 35 special, and then November, so we talk about Doctor Who. The November-December issue is a 60 years of Doctor Who special, which is going to have a massive piece on Doctor Who in comics, on TV, and also in audio.
Wow.
So Tripwire is comics, film, and TV, and also a little bit of illustration. Whenever it takes my fancy up to a limit, so that we do cover, we put trailers up, we do interviews, we do a lot of we have a hell of a lot of content up there, and we try and update it regularly. So we cover genre, but we cover things like crime as well. So we are a little bit broader than some of the other comic websites. Our remit is slightly different.
Comic websites, the competition. That's fine. I'm more than happy to help out. It's cool. All right, so there we go. We're having another look at the website. I love the fact you've got all the different avenues you can get information.
Oh well, I mean, our web guys are good. We redesigned it about 2 years ago, and actually, they did a wonderful job. It looks really nice. It's really nice and clean, and hopefully it's quite navigable.
Yeah. Here are some of the covers that you can get. That's the one.
That's Mark Chiarello, and that's Walt Simonson. They're both exclusive for the book. And to get Walt Simonson, who I've been a fan of since I was a kid, to do a brand new cover for us was just unbelievable. Seriously, it still feels quite unreal that we got to do that. I mean, that's just spectacular.
The cover to the left, which we're using as our backdrop, I will let you into a secret. I said to my wife, which one of these covers should I use for my backdrop for this pod? And we had a look through it, and I'd already picked which one was my favorite. And my wife was like, yeah, I like that one with all the red. I was like, yeah, that's the one I like to do. So
they're both great covers in different ways. Just the left-hand one is more of a kind of graphic approach, whereas the other one is more of a trad comic cover.
Yeah, and I think I like the surreality of that one.
Oh, the keys, yes. No, it is quite a surreal cover.
Quite clever. We saw some of the art already. Are the other covers on here as well? Let's have a scroll.
Well, the pin-ups are, I think, if you scroll all the way down. Sorry, it's a bit slow to load sometimes.
No, it's fine.
But you should have. So we've got pin-ups as well at the back of the books. We've got pin-ups from people like Drumroll. Eventually, sorry, it's a bit of a long post.
No, it's fine. You know what? We'll do it. We'll do it slightly differently, shall we?
Okay.
I think I have some of them here. Let's.
The JPEGs. It might be better if you could use the JPEGs that I gave you. Yeah. And I can talk you through them.
Sounds like a plan. Give me 2 seconds.
It's all right. The wonder of technology.
Here's one that I absolutely thought, oh my God, I can't believe it. Is this? It's coming up shortly. Ta-da!
There we go. So that's Liam Sharp and Bill Sienkiewicz. That's a really nice piece.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's a slightly more abstract sort of take on the character, but the book, we're having this section at the back. It's going to be 8 pages of these color pinups, and it's nice. We've got the black and white story, and then we got the contrast of the color pinups. And I've already started to obviously to lay out the book, and the color. It's going to look amazing. I'm really excited to see it. I mean, I've tried to design it to be like a book that I would buy myself. If I saw it on the shelves, and I think it should definitely tick that particular box.
Definitely. I love this cover. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. Liam Sharp. His artwork over the last 5 years has evolved so much from where it was.
Well, you've got it's penciled by Liam and ink by Sienkiewicz, and you can see that they're a great match, because Sienkiewicz brings the more abstract, the kind of the sharper lines, whereas Sharp is more of a kind of a traditional artist. But it's a really good mix. I mean, they've worked together quite a few times on things.
The Sherlock there reminds me of the Shadow.
Oh yeah, actually, well, that's not. Yeah, I mean, definitely there is that kind of mystery. I mean, it has to be a little bit of enigma, to promote. I mean, that's what makes him. It's one of the things that makes him such an interesting character.
Yeah, definitely. Which we've got a couple more to go. Give me 2 seconds.
I sent you a few, so I'm happy to people to see as many of them as they can, because they're all in the book. If you buy the book, you get all of these pinups, and it doesn't matter which cover you choose, because you get all of these. Right, that's Sean Martinborough, which again, you talk about Doctor Who. There's a little bit of Doctor Who there, a little bit of John Pertwee, I guess. He's kind of he looks. I mean, that's not bad. I mean, I think that works. And then you've got Miller, and I think that it's a very cool cover. I also thought it's a little bit of kind of Steve Yeowell to it in terms of its approach, and I think it's a really lovely, striking. And my friend John Charles has coloured. Not as Liam Sharp, but he coloured that, and he coloured the Walt Simonson cover, and he coloured the Barry Kitson piece. And he's a very talented colorist.
Stop spoiling what I'm doing. Look at I was getting to the Kitson. There we go.
And again, that's such a classic.
That is quintessentially British.
It's such a British piece with the Union Jack and the magnifying glass, and then in the background. And you've got kind of like a slightly militaristic looking figure on the left, and you've got and there's so much detail. The more you look at it, the more you notice is in it, and it's it could make a cover. I mean, we're not running these as covers, but we did some of them as prints when we did our crowdfunder. But that was just very kindly did this piece for us. And again, John Charles coloured it, and it's a very striking piece. It's gonna I want it to feel like an event. People have put their money down for this book. I want people to go through it and go, wow, look at this amazing section at the back. I've also written a brand new prose short story as well, which is running at the back, featuring Franklin Miller, who we saw. So that's a new sort of 1,500 word prose piece. So there's a lot of stuff. I want people to feel like when they put down their money, they're getting really good value. And that's David Hitchcock. That's another really nice piece. I mean, Holmes slightly more ethereal here, but it's still
drawn, a little bit drawn. You know what I'm saying? He's got that kind of
like Elric.
Yeah, he's quite.
He's quite amazing. He looks quite sort of disturbed. It's a great piece.
Lovely piece. And what you've got the zombies in the background we talked about. You've got him looking like some sort of not adult, but he's weathered to say.
Well, he looks a bit like a bit Dracula. It's very it's a very gothic piece. Actually.
Very much so. It's a bit like a Dracula that hasn't fed for a while.
Yeah, well, exactly.
And then this is a really clever background. You've got the character at the back, and then you've got the clock serving as his eye. Now, that's a little bit.
It is a very clever piece.
You just look at it and you think.
And then you've got Baker Street, on the right hand side. You've got his house, and then you've got Six, who was the assassin, just sort of tucked away with the sword, and he uses a cookery knife. The cookery knife is what the Gurkhas use. Which is on the front. If you're on the Simonson cover, there's a big cookery knife at the bottom, which Walt used as a visual device, cleverly to tie it all together.
So when we talk about these covers, these pinups, because they are absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
How much input do you have on them? Do you kind of give sort of like a remit to the artist, or do you just say, look, this is the bare bones of the story, or this is a key element, knock your socks off? Well,
actually, I just sent them the 3 shorts, and I sent them basically the plot synopsis, and I said, feel free to make it as abstract as you like. For example, the trailer cover, which is wonderful, doesn't really connect, with the story directly, but visually it's very striking. Whereas Walt's cover deals more directly with the elements of the story. So I said to them, I gave them fairly free rein. I said, as long as we have the characters in there, I mean, actually, did I send you the Andy Bennett one as well? I don't know if you've got that.
Send me shooting so shed loads of the thing.
Well, that's what you wanted.
Hang fire, let me find out.
If you can find that, because that was the black and white. But obviously, Andy Bennett is the interior artist, but John Charles coloured it. But it's such a wonderfully composed piece. And again, I didn't give him much guidance, but it captures the flavour and the different elements in the story, but does it in a kind of abstract fashion. And I think it's brilliantly clever. I'm really, his work is just getting better and better. Every time I see, when he sends me new pages, it's incredibly exciting. It's like Christmas. Literally, I open up Dropbox and he says there's a few more pages in there, and you think, blimey, there's another. And he's really outdone himself each time.
Can't say it's Christmas. There's no Santa. You've destroyed that earlier.
Well, if Christmas was real, it would be.
The book is available now, or
it is available to pre-order from Diamond. I can get you the item number. I don't have to, but it's all in the post, and it's available from Luna if people use Luna for their ordering. As I said, if they're UK based, they can order from Waterstones and Foils and Amazon UK as well. So just spread the love, as they say. Do it through the bookshops, do it through your local comic shop. Just there's a lot of different places it's available, and whatever's the most convenient for people, really.
Indeed. Excellent. So there is the Tripwire magazine website with the pre-order on there. As you've said, it's available on Luna, Diamond, and all the other various places. You have social media kicking off. There you go. You've got Facebook. Yes. Facebook is still a place to go to check all this stuff for updates. Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be news on how to get the book there as well.
There is, and previews of pages, so if people join, they can see these snazzy little previews of the book as it's going along. It's kind of exciting to see it evolve as it's getting closer to being printed.
Excellent. Right, we're running out of time, so give me your elevator, as they say in the States, or lift, as we say over here. Give me your elevator pitch on why people should check out Sherlock Holmes and the Empire Builders.
Sherlock Holmes and the Empire Builders, Genie Volume 1 is the world's greatest detective as you've never seen him, fighting against an existential threat that could bring England down to restore the country's status quo.
There you go. Short, sweet, and snappy. Just like you, Joel.
Well, I try.
Joel, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
No, honestly, to hear someone talk so passionately about a character that I'm going to say some people take for granted, Joel. There's still more to be said, about the character, and I hope that we've managed to find some new things, to say about Holmes and Watson and the world he inhabits and this new world that we've created for him. Cool. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. I have to say, I am intrigued. You have piqued my curiosity.
I'm glad to hear that. That's I think we can hope for. We hope that your listeners will be interested to check it out as well. So excellent.
All right, Joel, thank you so much for your time.
Johnny, thanks again.
You're welcome. Don't forget to check out UCPM for all your favorite shows. You saw the trailer for it earlier. You might have even danced along to the theme music. Who knows? It's the Old Timers Comic Book Show. And if you like everything Marvel or DC, don't forget to check out the No Prize podcast for all you Star Wars fans, and of course the Definitive Crusade for everything that's DC. And of course, check Tripwire if you want to. If you have an alternative view on everything as well. There you go. What more could you want? All that for the price of a podcast. Final words, Joel. I really do appreciate it. I know how busy you are.
Thank you again. Thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thank you. I have been your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes. And as always, adios.
Visit undercovercapes.com for the latest and greatest podcasts via the Undercover Capes Podcast Network. Also visit our parent company website, comiccrusaders.com, all about comic pop culture.